I have a very interesting lens. TTArtisan 50mm F1.2 lens. Let's see how good this $100 lens is. Hi there, my name is Peter Voisgaard and I am a professional photographer from Helsinki, Finland. And let's start with the disclaimer. This lens was sent to me, but they did not ask me to do this video, or they do not see this video beforehand, so all that I'm saying are my own opinion, like always. And let's start with the look and feel of this lens. This lens is all metal. It comes with lens cap, which is also metal, no lens hood, unfortunately. The aperture ring is in the front, and then you have the focusing ring right here, and it turns really smooth and nice. And I will talk about that a bit later when we talk about the handling of this lens. This lens is really well made, and it fits perfectly to a Olympus body or a Panasonic Micro Four Thirds body. This is an aps-c lens, but it has the mount for Micro Four Thirds. And let's talk about the handling of this lens. I'm not so used to having the aperture ring in the front. Like I said, with the manual lenses, when I'm out there shooting, I might try to focus with the aperture ring because it's in the front. I'm used to so that the aperture ring is in the back, but that's just me because I have heard that many other people like the aperture ring like it is on this one. And yes, it's a matter of personal taste. But good thing about this is there are clicks on this. And then you have this small, I don't know, it's not knobs, but it's, you know, as you can see, it has this, so it's easy to move the aperture ring. So the handling is really well done. And also the focusing ring is really nice and smooth. And it's not too long either. I like when it's faster to focus. But the only slight thing is that at 5 meters, traction is a bit harder, so it's not really smooth. So for video work, that might be a problem, but most likely in photography, it doesn't really matter. But it's just some odd thing that it has. Don't know why. And let's talk about the aperture blades. Yeah, you might wonder why I want to talk about the aperture blades. But as you can see, when you're stopping down, the aperture ring or the iris in the middle of the lens is not around. It has this funny, almost a star-looking shape, which of course results with a interesting-looking bokeh when you're stopping it down. And this is something that you either like or not. I'm not really sure if this is a good idea to have the aperture blades like this, but on the other hand, it is something different and interesting. And if you need something different, then this could be an option for you. So who is this lens and what is it for? Well, the focal length of 50mm is an equivalent of field of view of 100mm in full frame. So it's a short telephoto lens. And portraiture is usually shot with, you know, from 25 to 75. So this 50mm fits perfectly for that range of focal lengths, which will be used or are used quite often with portraiture. Unfortunately, I don't have any samples of portraiture with this lens right now on this video. I will make a video in the future where I talk more about portraiture and different focal lengths and different lenses for that. But that's in the future, so be sure to subscribe that you don't miss that video. Then, of course, landscapes, cityscapes are fine. Maybe not really big cityscapes, but the details in a city. And then, of course, for those longer distance candid street photography, portraits could be also one thing to do. If you're not familiar with doing street photography with a wide-angle lens, then this might be a good solution. And it's really easy to use, even though it's a manual focus. But remember, you do have the possibilities to add magnify and peaking in Olympus cameras at least. So that will help you a lot with the manual focusing. And how is this for close-up? Because that's also something where close-up photography where you can use manual focus. Well, the closest focusing distance is 50 centimeters, so it's not a very convenient close-up lens. But as you can see from these two images, you know, you can do some nature close-ups with bigger plants and bigger things to photograph. And of course, if you add extension tubes, then this might be a close-up lens too. And before we get into the image quality and look at some images that I took with this lens, let's talk about the specs, or I will show the specs of this lens for you here. And before we start making the images, I will set the lens info to the camera. It's M1 Mark III that I'm using this time, and I will set to the lens info, of course, TTArtisan 50mm F1.2, so I will know what lens I've used years from now. Of course, it doesn't tell me the exact aperture that I was using because I had to set it for f1.2. But in theory, you could set a lens info for every aperture if you want. But, you know, in street photography, it's not very convenient to do that. All right, that was a nice walk that I had. You know, about an hours of walking around this suburb area, which has a lot of graffitis, as you saw, and, you know, took some images of the trams too to see if I can, you know, nail the focus for moving subjects. And yes, I did, but I also missed a few. I think I messed up the best photograph I missed. But, you know, it is a bit hard with the manual focus sometimes, even though you can use magnify and focus peaking that you can set up as already mentioned in the video. But what about the overall image quality? I don't see any big problems with that. It's good enough for most things. And of course, if you're using it wide open in bright sunlight, there might be the highlights might be bleeding a bit. And then I was talking about the very interesting bokeh, or because of the size, or not the size, but the shape of the aperture blade, which is quite interesting. And if you're stopping down, the bokeh might be a bit busy looking. I don't know what that actually is, but sometimes it looks a bit busy. And yeah, but in overall quality, I think it was quite nice. And if you consider the price, which is around €100/$, this is a real bargain. So if you are in a lens of this focal length, then you might want to consider this. Is this lens worth getting? Well, it's a very tempting price. It varies from 90 to €120, so it's not considered a very expensive lens, what it is. And as I said, it is very well made, so there is no problem with that. And the image quality, as you saw and as I told you, is really interesting. And I kind of like the way it renders the image, the unsharp part. Of course, if you want to stop down to 2.8, you will get the best image quality. It's a bit soft, wide open, but in most cases, it doesn't really matter. Like you saw in my images, there's nothing wrong in that sense. We always have to remember that the image quality is important in the photographs that you actually are making. You know, well, funny way to say, well, when you're really photographing, of course, test image is a different thing, as you saw from the brick wall test. It's not completely sharp, and it's, as I said, it's at its best for f2.8. And what else about the thing? I think the price is the biggest point on this. And if you need a lens with a quite interesting looking bokeh and are in a budget situation that you really need a portrait lens, yeah, this is something to consider. I don't think it's a bad lens, but of course it has its limitations. If you want to really tacked sharp images, then this might not be for you. But if you want, as I said, an interesting looking image, then this might be something for you. At least you don't waste a lot of money for that. And that's why I really like these new manufacturers that are making lenses for Micro Four Thirds. It gives us a lot of opportunities to try different kind of glass, and also there are very good options for the budget lenses too, so that you don't have to spend a ton of money to get a portrait lens. So this could be something. And here are some other videos of other manufacturers that I've tested, or lenses that I've tested for Micro Four Thirds. You might want to watch that next. But hey, thanks for watching, and bye for now.